Concerns about anything, I guess? John?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Warford. I live in Bismarck, and I own a ranch property in northeast Bismarck in Naughton Township. I'm here to request and to bring my story with regard to my experience with the Summit Carbon Solutions Pipeline Company. And I'd like to request this commission to look into the logistics, the process, to get it on the radar screen so that if it is deemed worthy on the part of the commission, that you consider creating an ordinance that would prevent eminent domain, taking a property, and the associated issues with the carbon pipeline company. And if I may speak, are you okay with me speaking?
Yeah, we're okay with that. We did pass a resolution several months back that all 5 of the commissioners had opposed
The use of eminent.
the use of eminent domain. And at that time, we were told that that's as far as we can go. That
And it was basically window dressing.
correct.
Right.
It was, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
that-
Is
that
there an
was-
ordinance with it?
that
There's no
was-
ordinance because we don't have that authority until now to create an ordinance.
That's why I'm here tonight, because I think, it was
But-
pretty
but
monumental.
Just so
The-
you know where the commission's at.
Absolutely, right, the home
Yeah.
rule chart. So what I'm suggesting is just bringing information to you so that you could begin the process of creating an ordinance, because I know you did, and thank you for passing the eminent domain thing. So I first received a letter in September of '21, was a generic letter from Summit Carbon Solutions, where they indicated that the property that I own north and east of Bismarck, that it is, will be located where this pipeline is going to go. So I called the engineer on the 800 number, and I said, I'm not interested in having this pipeline on my property. Nothing happened until April of this year. April 2nd, I received communication from Summit Carbon Pipeline. They indicated to me that they wanted to have an easement to go through the property to put a half-mile pipeline. They wanted to have a 50-foot setback on each side, and they wanted me to sign this easement. They offered money to do this. This is across a pristine pasture land with native grass on it. It's never been broken, and I choose to keep it that way, and I did not want to have it scarred up by a pipeline. I said no. They had landowners' representatives get in touch with me last summer, and the change went from a half-mile request up to a mile request on my property. I'd like to read a letter to you that I got. I'll just read one line from it that I received from Summit Carbon on July 11th, 2022. This letter was wanting to have access to the property, and they wanted to have an easement. And I'm going to read the last line of the second paragraph. It's from the right-of-way manager of North Dakota. This line said, "If we have not received an executed permission form or other response from you within 10 days, Summit will be forced to explore alternative means for accessing your property." I thought that was a threat to me, a threat of maybe using eminent domain, taking my property, or at least trespassing on the property. If I might continue to talk a little bit about Summit Carbon, with your permission, Chairman Peluso. Summit Carbon Pipelines is from a company that began as an agricultural company in Iowa. And I want to indicate that this is a private company that is threatening me as a landowner. This is not a public entity. Summit Carbon Solutions has never done a carbon pipeline before. This is their first pipeline. I'm concerned about unintended consequences that take place from a first time in doing things. It's a $5.4 billion pipeline. They intend on spending $81 million in Burleigh County putting this pipeline in. They will get $1 billion of profits each year that come from government subsidies. In other words, our tax dollars are paying for their profits. They plan on sequestering, injecting in the ground over in Oliver and Mercer County after this pipeline crosses the river, comes through Burleigh County, between 12 million and up to 20 million tons of CO2 a year. They're injecting it into the soil. Are there going to be some unintended consequences over there? I'm sure. They have never done a 24-inch pipeline before. All through Burleigh County is a 24-inch pipeline with extreme pressures, Chairman Peluso. So this is a 2,000-mile long pipeline starting in Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, through North Dakota, crossing the river and going over into Oliver and Mercer County. They have paid out so far $200 million to landowners. I'm concerned, if I might continue, with three things. I'll try to be as quick as possible, but I was asked to be maybe a spokesperson on behalf of my property, which is in Naughton Township. We had a township meeting, and 100% of the Naughton Township residents do not want to have this pipeline going through Naughton Township. Safety, the taking of property, and I think the negative effect on the expansion of Bismarck and Burleigh County. I'd like to talk just briefly about the safety. Carbon pipelines are different than oil pipelines. If an oil pipeline has a leak, it leaks out over the ground, it hurts the environment. If a CO2 pipeline has a leak, the liquid becomes a gas. CO2 gas in small amounts, it's in soda pop, it's good for you. Large amounts of this, it's an asphyxiant. It means it displaces the oxygen in your lungs, and if you're exposed to a CO2 leak from a pipeline, you die, or you'll be maimed, or you'll be very sick. There is a history that this has actually taken place. If you can look it up on the internet, it happened in Mississippi, 2020. Over 200 people were sickened. Double digits people died from a pipeline. I ask you to maybe Google. You can take a look. You can Google a pipeline burst, and you can see this huge geyser coming out from the pipeline. CO2 is heavier than air, and so it goes along the land. And it disperses throughout the land. So we need to be concerned about the safety of leaks. Summit Carbon says that they are going to have a series of valves, they're going to have a series of pressure gauges, and they're going to have someone monitoring a computer screen down in Ames, Iowa, that's going to monitor 2,000 miles of pipeline in case that there is a leak. So it's not if, but when there's going to be a leak out in Burleigh County of a 24-inch carbon pipeline if it goes in, if we do not have an ordinance. So how fast can they turn it off? Have there been computer glitches before? I submit to you that there are a lot of unintended consequences. If you do the math on this gas coming out of the pipeline, if we have a 30-mile-an-hour wind, in 1 minute, that gas will go a half mile. In 2 minutes, it'll go a mile. In 6 minutes, it'll go 3 miles. My property is less than a mile from Naughton School. This is a functioning school of the Bismarck Public Schools. There are between 30 and 40 kids go there. 3 of my grandchildren go there. Within 1 or 2 minutes of a pipeline breach on my property, this gas could go there, if it's a south wind, up to that school. Silver Ranch is about elementary school. Silver Ranch, all of Mariner's properties, all of these properties that could be affected by the cloud of CO2 gas is within a few miles of the pipeline. Talking about emergency responses, how is someone going to respond to the emergencies? Rural fire going to need to go out there? They can't patch it. So essentially, an emergency responder is going to go out there and pick up victims, take them to the hospital, or take them to the morgue. So I think that the emergency response plan of Summit is to it misses, if there's a leak, I hope it misses the people, or I hope it just disperses without anything. I'm not talking about, I'll be brief, not talking about crossing the Missouri River or the first time that this has ever been done. Taking of property, you've addressed that issue before. I'll be brief again, but I think that it's un-American that a private company should take my property, put a pipeline on there, scar my land, and decrease the value of the land. What people don't realize, the other rural residents that are maybe in the room here, is that it's just not the people on the pipeline that are going to be affected. It's the rural residents and the CO2 gas from a leak. So miles around this pipeline are going to be affected. Finally, I think that it would affect the long-term economic development of the city of Bismarck and in Burleigh County. This pipeline is way too close, Chairman Peluso. It's way too close to the city of Bismarck. It's about a mile outside of the ETA, and it will, in my opinion, affect the economic development in the future. A previous speaker talked about 2045. It's not even, I don't think anybody's even looking into that. There are unintended consequences with having it. I think that if the pipeline goes in and there's not an ordinance keeping it out, or why not put it out where it's not going to affect any citizens, I think there'll be like a no-build zone on either side of it. What about the insurance, for the homes that are there? I think it's basically would be a danger zone. So in conclusion, what's really the benefit of having this pipeline? We need to have an ordinance to protect the citizens that are going to be affected. What is the benefit? Well, they say in they have some, very glossy brochures that go out that we're all sent. They say that they're going to create 11,000 jobs. Well, those jobs are to build the pipeline. What happens, when the pipeline's built? Maybe a few jobs for the ethanol plants. What about the increase in property taxes? They say in the brochure that there'd be $400,000 of property taxes brought into Burleigh County. I submit that pales in comparison to the decrease in the value of properties in the city of Bismarck. So in closing, what is the benefit? Why do we need to have an ordinance, and why should we begin that process for the ordinance? The benefit of this pipeline is for 31 ethanol plants that are in Iowa, Minnesota, and South Dakota. There are 31 ethanol plants and one in North Dakota, Gary Tharlson's plant, just at Castleton. So there are 32 ethanol plants that will benefit by being able to create green ethanol. This green ethanol then will be sold to California, and they propose to California and Oregon. The silliness of it all is the California legislature just passed legislation saying that after 2035 they're banning internal combustion engine cars. It's all electric after that. So, I mean, it seems, rather ridiculous. The benefit will be to Summit Carbon. They make $1 billion a year from our tax dollars. It just does not seem to make sense. The green ethanol it's the same ethanol. It's just that they it's the same ethanol they sell, but it's green because they send the carbon dioxide through this pipeline through North Dakota with really no benefit to North Dakotans, certainly no benefit to anybody in Burleigh County, so that corn farmers in Iowa and the ethanol plants can make more money, and someone can make money from this. I'm opposed to it. I think I'm being wronged as a citizen in Burleigh County. I very respectfully ask this commission, and I know we're in a transition between this commission and another commission, but if the process could be started here and then transition to the next commission so that attorney lawyer can come up with a suitable type of ordinance to protect me and my fellow citizens, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you very much. If there anybody in the I'd like to thank my fellow Naughton Township members to be here. Would everybody in this room that is opposed to this pipeline please stand up? Commissioners, we need to have an ordinance. Chairman Peluso.
Thank you very much. Well put, eloquently spoken. I think it's a dumb idea from the beginning to bury CO2. I mean, I don't get it. If I'm correct, doesn't corn need CO2 to live, to grow, to prosper?
Everything needs.
Everything,
yeah.
but corn, I think, is one of the biggest users of CO2.
Yeah.
Another question I wonder is how did it ever get this far to begin with? I mean,
Well, they have.
are we the last
yes.
county on the line that's
we're
resisting?
Other
Seriously?
than it crosses a river and then it's injected into the soil. You know, great question, Chairman Peluso and members of the commission. This is huge money. We're talking they're backed by J.P. Morgan, Continental Oil. They've got this $50 per ton subsidy that the U.S. government, there's even talk of $85 a ton. And, you know, it does not benefit North Dakota. And it is all so that we can say, or somebody can say in North Dakota that we are we're sequestering carbon, we're doing carbon collection, and that we're going to be carbon neutral in North Dakota by whatever. And this just does not seem to make any sense that we in Burleigh County should have this 24-inch line by a private company that's never done it before. With all of the risks, you know, think of the rural residents out there. This leak comes out, the wind blows. I mean, what are these people thinking? So how did it get this far? It's money. It's money. They're chasing that federal subsidy to get the $1 billion.
To me, there's got to be another. There's got to be another end game somewhere. There's something we don't know that somebody's going to do something with that sequestered CO2. They're just not going to leave that in the ground forever. I can't see it. There's got to be money at the end of it somewhere, somehow, and I guess that remains to be seen. But
I think they have a requirement that they have to leave it in the ground. My point is unintended consequences. I know it's going to leak. I mean, you put over 100 million tons of CO2 in the land. First of all, I mean, this is North Dakota. I mean, what are they thinking? You know, why would we want to do that to our state to take 100 million tons of CO2? First of all,
Commissioner Bittner.
Yes, Commissioner
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got to tell you, one of the concerns that I've had that is what I think is a real big deal. I don't know about the science and what the actual company is going to do, but I've heard that what they want to do is they want to bury this pipeline about 4 feet deep and then have approximately 3 feet of cover over it. I got news for you folks. Our foundations, when we do construction, you know, I'm a contractor, right? We put foundations deeper than that in the ground so that we override the freeze-thaw cycle. Right. Any farm kid in North Dakota could tell you that the winter and the freeze-thaw brings rocks to the surface. Now, if you're putting a pipeline that's only 3-4 feet in the ground, I got a real concern with that. And that would be part of this ordinance.
Chairman Peluso, Commissioner Bittner, I've had a water pipe out at my farm, 6 to 8 feet down, freeze.
Chairman Peluso, can I add one? We do have carbon sequestration, already in the state, but it is from an ethanol plant straight below it to be held. So it's North Dakota waste straight below without a pipe or very small piping. It's right in the same site. Right. I'm not saying I'm against all carbon sequestration or carbon capture, but I do have, like you do, grave concerns about taking waste from other states. I'm from Mercer County. I grew up in Hazen, and putting it in my hometown county through the county I reside in now. So I hold your concerns. I just want to make sure that, you know, that there are different ways of doing this that may be more agreeable to some people than others, but concerns about piping it that far is very concerning to me.
Yes, Chairman Peluso, Commissioner Matthews, yes, for sure. In speaking with our federal delegation, which I have spoken with them, they indicated that this subsidy was not designed for summit carbon. It was for exactly what you said, for the small ethanol plants, short lines, 8-inch lines, in rural areas where it's not around houses and threatening people, and helping our coal industry. That's what it was designed for, and these people now have done a about shift. It's basically a shell game. It's a shell game to take this carbon to help the ethanol plants in Iowa and the corn farmers in Iowa. And we're not talking mom and pop farmers down there. We're talking 10, 20, 30, 40,000 acres of corn. They're going to benefit, not our farmers. The farmers in Burleigh County, we have family farms here. We're not these big, huge corn farms.
One other thing, Chairman Paluso, if I can continue, and Julie, you might need to back me up on this, so if it is my understanding for any ordinance, and this isn't just this issue, but any ordinance, we cannot supersede a higher entity, such as if the state has an ordinance for speeding, we can't say we can charge more, or if the state has a certain law, we can't. So we do still have restrictions from higher entities or higher governances about making ordinances. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. So I don't mean to put, I don't want to put, but I'm just saying, that's why Julie, our state's attorney, is involved to help guide us in making those decisions and what is within our authority with the ordinances.
I think some of the immediate decisions we could make is how they pass under our county roads. I think we can deny second approach permits and third approach permits at where they're asking for them. I mean, there's things that we can do to deter what they're trying to do. I don't know if they want to go under 4 feet under our roads or not, but that wouldn't be acceptable.
Thank you.
You know what I think we should do? I think we should open up kind of a period of time here where we're collecting that information from all associated parties. You know, if you're a landowner in Burleigh County and you have a concern, we should set up one person that's going to be at like the clearinghouse for information, because somebody I'm sure has sent to all of us a copy of an ordinance from Shelby County, Iowa. I'm not, going to rubber stamp somebody else's ordinance because, quite frankly, I reviewed it and some of it just doesn't apply. But if we could set up a clearinghouse like our planning department, to where we can get this information together, whether it's from the highway department and the effect on the roads, or whether it's from citizens and what have you, that we can start, or if somebody has suggestions for a specific part of an ordinance. We've heard that there's obviously a lot of concerns, whether it's the depth, whether it's the eminent domain, whether it's whatever. But I think if the sooner we had information all compiled that we can sift through and start to form the ordinance that would relate to Burleigh County, the better off we would be.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the other issue here is the Missouri River. And that's not overseen by the state or by the county. You've got many federal organizations that you have to get permission from. It's just like I'm sure you've all read the article about the railroad bridge, and the Navy finally said yes. And that Missouri River is the largest supply of water this state has, and we're now taking it to the eastern part of the state. It will eventually end up in the Fargo area within the next 10 years. So that, too, is another concern. A 4-foot pipe under the Missouri River, 4-foot deep pipe under the Missouri River is not going to make it.
No, had that pipeline been in existence during the 2011 flood,
Oh,
you'll recall
it
that
would've
that
gone.
scouring
It
was
would've
way
gone.
deeper than that, so.
I believe it was down to 40 feet in points.
So where's the state stand on all this? Have they approved it? Have they?
Wasn't
it
it
their
just
blessings?
filed with the PSC, I believe? I
It was
think we
just
got an
filed
email.
recently?
Chairman Paluso, and I'm not totally knowledgeable on it, but they have filed with the PSC for a permit to do it. The other ploy, I think they filed 2 different routes, so to speak. and they're asking for a permit from the PSC. They're also asking for what, as I understand, what's called common carrier status, which allows them to be treated as an oil pipeline, even though they're private, but they will then be treated as an oil pipeline as a common carrier, and then they can use eminent domain. One of the public service commissioners has recused herself from this already, as she is a participating landowner, or their family is. There's a second initiative as well in the legislature, but time is of the essence. There is talk about a representative from Hazelton to introduce in the North Dakota legislature in January when it convenes an eminent domain law for carbon pipelines, specific to carbon pipelines, because carbon pipelines are different than oil pipelines.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak up or have anything to say?